Hello and welcome to another episode of Captured by Women. My name is Elizabeth Olympia Emmanuel and I'm a restaurateur. I'm joined together with my wonderful co-hosts,
Sarah Safweje, real estate developer.
Nansata Yakubu, a development consultant.
In this episode of Captured by Women, we'll be discussing the sudden rush of international automobile manufacturing companies into Ghana. There has been an announcement by Volkswagen, the German car manufacturing company, to be setting up its manufacturing and assembling plant here in Ghana. CFAO, Suzuki, and Toyota have also announced setting up their factories and assembly plants sometime in the third quarter of this year. What does this mean for the local manufacturing industry in Ghana, especially Kantanka?
The Ghana cedi is making headlines again, and not for reasons we are unfamiliar with. The cedi is lagging behind major trading currencies, and in year-to-date terms, it has lost a whopping 14.3%. The minority says that this requires another look at the government's 2019 budget, but other economists say that the economic fundamentals are strong, and this is not the reason for the cedi's poor performance. As we say in Ghana, now who calls them?
Meanwhile, police brutality is back in the news. The Ghana Police Service has come under strong condemnation for assault on journalists. In the past few days, Ghana police have assaulted journalists from the Ghanaian Times, and people are wondering whether this is going to lead to the loss of public confidence in the Ghana Police Service. In days also past, we have seen a trotro driver and his mate beat up a police officer. Could this be warranted by the fact that the Ghana Police Service is being seen as not doing their work well?
The spin is up next when we return from the break. Welcome back from the break. This is The Spin. Ladies, so Volkswagen, Toyota, Suzuki, they plan on setting up their manufacturing plants in Ghana. Is this good news?
Well, it's good news and not so good news and bad news at the same time. All together. Because when you hear a car manufacturing plant is coming to set up in your country, you're like, yippee! That means cars at a lower price for everybody else.
And employment.
And employment and all the added-ons that come with it. But at the same time, you then wonder about local car manufacturing industries. Case in point, we all know who we're talking about, Kantanka.
Yeah.
What does it mean for industries like that? He already is not in the position where he can compete with Toyota and Suzuki and all that. And already wasn't, even when we're importing them. So what does it mean? I think those are the main questions everybody's asking, and whether that would send them back to what it was before they started. Because after a while, I think they are getting into the market bit by bit. But with this new car manufacturing coming, so I don't know if Sarah too has something, especially just on Kantanka. Do you think that should be?
I think Kantanka will definitely suffer more than he's been suffering already, because I don't see that there's been a huge intake of his products. I mean, we all talk about how it might support the industry better, the local industry, if the government, for example, was buying Kantanka vehicles. But for me, I'm more interested in the impact it will have on unemployment, because there should be jobs. But at the same time, how many jobs are there going to be? In the 70s, we were assembling Nissan and I think Toyota, and there were skilled workers.
Yeah,
but all those skilled workers by now, they've retired, if those who are even alive. Do we have the skilled labor? Have we got plans in place to train people? I know Volkswagen, I think it's going to take at least about 2 years for it to be up and running. That gives us enough time to actually focus on training people specifically for these jobs. Then again, in most car manufacturing plants, a lot of the work is not manual.
Exactly.
It's automated.
It's automated.
So robots are going to be taking the jobs. I mean, I don't know how many jobs we are going to add, but it's important that we know what the plan is to train people specifically for these jobs and to prepare us so that we don't have an influx of expatriate fitters coming to do the work that local people can do.
And this is where I believe our ministry should be at the negotiation table and ensure that we do not have unfair competition on the market, even though it's good for the industry. There should be training of, for instance, graduates from the Polytechnic and the technical universities go out to these factories out in the West to study and train enough to take on the jobs. At least 70% of the staff employed should be Ghanaian.
Yeah, those are some of the issues that we don't know about. Because usually when they announced it at this level, when they announced that we are going to establish, it all seems good and well. But when you go to the small print of what it means for Toyota to have an assembling plant or Volkswagen to have an assembling plant, that is where you seem to see what or how much we are going to benefit from this. There are other countries. We know Rwanda, Volkswagen went there first. And also I think we should be told whether it's manufacturing or assembling. Or those semantics are not explained. So to a large extent, you'll be happy, or it's just going to be that we're just going to have cars on our road. If the cost of assembling a car in Ghana and for you to buy it is not going to be any cheaper than importing it, I think in the long run, it's not going to benefit anybody. And if it's going to be established as a free zone, I haven't heard how it's going to be established, but if it's going to be a free zone, then we are probably losing more than we are getting. What we are saying is that it shouldn't just be at the level of leadership that government says we are going to do it and that's it. There should be a way for the public to have a say in the discussion, to find out what exactly is going on and how much we are going to. Whilst that is being said, I think that the local industry should also be given some concession from something like that, so that we encourage people to really be more proactive and to invest in the economy. It is not every day that Toyota should be the one or this big name should be the one. They also started off as how Kantanka started off. Yes. When the president, the CEO of Suzuki was speaking, you saw his surname. He's Suzuki. That is his surname. So it is his legacy he's bringing here. It would be nice to see Kantanka also speaking in Japan and other places. So what we are saying is that, yes, bring in people to establish, but also let's give support to our own local industries to also prosper.
I've taken the test drive of one of the Kantanka SUVs. It's a 4-wheel drive, and it wasn't that bad. It was quite nice. It was good. So I'm not sure why we haven't supported, we as a government has not supported by taking on, by some of the ministries can actually take on some of these vehicles as staff for, even if it's even city driving, because he has the 4 different types. And there's a small city car, there's a saloon car, there's the one that looks like the Toyota 4Runner. And we should actually assist our local industry. And if government, who is the largest employer in the country, does not patronize the goods of a local manufacturer, then how do we expect him to flourish?
But what are the Kantanka prices?
All right,
compared
so
to when you bring in like a home used car?
For example, the saloon car, as at the time I did that test drive, which was in December, and I asked for the price, it was about 80,000 cedis for the saloon car. That was a 2-liter engine vehicle. It's a saloon car looking like a Corolla.
That's not bad.
Yes, but even then, I don't think he's had any tax rebates, any tax reliefs on that, because he's been lamenting about that for a long time. He's not getting support, adequate support. So yes, I believe our ministries should assist in this vein. Government should get these vehicles instead of patronizing the imported luxury 4-wheel drives that are quite expensive.
And now we are also going to establish the factories here. There was another question that comes out of all these discussions, the issue of the luxury tax for the car. So now that Toyota is here, that means you don't pay the tax when you buy the car. So people are asking, maybe because the government buys lots of vehicles from these 3 big companies that are coming in. So in that case, the government is the only one that will benefit from not paying that luxury tax, because every other citizen, that means you pay it when you buy it. But the government is the biggest purchaser of these vehicles anyway. So that means that it's a bit of mischief here, because if we bring in Toyota and we are buying a luxury Toyota vehicle, nobody can even come down and say, oh, you bought a luxury Toyota and you are not paying the tax for it. So there's a bigger discussion out of all these.
And Ghana revenue would also lose quite some income from import duties.
From import duties. Yeah. There's also the issue about environmental sound technologies, and the West is going, yes, emission-friendly vehicles. They are going away from, they're going towards electric and more environmentally friendly versions of automobiles. So does that mean that the ones that they have been producing all this while is now going to be dumped onto the West African Ghanaian market? Because where else are they going to be putting that? Or they're bringing us the latest technology of electric cars to Ghana? No,
we don't have the charging points in place.
We don't have the charging points. So it means they are going to be revolutionizing their use of modern vehicles, and we take on the older versions.
Well, it remains to be seen. But
which are not environmentally friendly.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. But I think the general public consensus about why they are coming is not very clear. It's not just about it's going to be better for us. It's also going to be better for them. They definitely must have their research on point to want to come and establish here. But to what point? It's cheaper for them, maybe.
Cheaper production.
Cheaper production, and maybe to the West African market, the sub-region. You know, the Toyota tag has always made for Nigerian roads, as they used to say for years. Maybe it's now made for Ghanaian roads. but the issue is, if they are here, there must be reasons why they are here. So we, as a people, would need to engage more and know to what extent it will benefit us. But industry, local car manufacturing industry would definitely suffer, unless there are some things we can negotiate for in this agreement. But we all don't also know the agreement. So there are lots of issues.
We have a good leather industry, which even the military has a leather factory. So if that could be negotiated into the agreement where we do all the upholstery and seating for these vehicles, we are depending on the those who are going to be negotiating these deals to work it to our advantage as well.
Well, local content, that would depend on local content and how much it is pushed. I really hope that the powers that be have heard our concerns and will address them in due course. In the past, we haven't done too well in our negotiations on the extractive sector resources, but hopefully there will be a better chance for us to negotiate strong and hard in the automobile industry. Let's talk about the volatility of the cedi when we return from the break. At the end of January this year, the cedi was trading 4.4 cedis 90 pesos against the dollar. Barely 2 months later, it was trading 5 cedis 60 pesos against the dollar. In the last few days, it has rebounded to be trading at 5 cedis 40 pesos against the dollar. What does this mean for the government's budget? And with the economic fundamentals of the country said to be strong, what accounts for the current weak state of the Ghana cedi? We are fortunate to have with us on Capture today Dr. Sarkodie, who is an economist with the Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, and is also a lecturer of economics at the University of Ghana. Dr. Sarkodie, welcome to Captured by Women. The depreciation of the cedi seems to have become an annual issue. Every year after Christmas, it seems to happen. Do you have any explanation for that?
Well, the Christmas thing that you're referring to is the seasonality of the depreciation of the cedi. But the cedi has been depreciating against the major currencies for several reasons. I have about 7 of them here.
Okay.
The first one is what we know from secondary school, the fundamentals. You know, Ghana is an import-dependent economy. We have been importing almost everything. And last time I heard from the president that the cocoa proceeds is used to import only 3 items: rice, sugar, and then poultry. And it's finished.
Wow.
The entire revenue we get from cocoa is used to import only 3. So if you keep importing almost everything, you import onions, you import tomatoes, basic things that can be produced in the economy.
Toothpicks.
So that is the first problem which has been with us. since Gadgetsberg's time. So we have that problem with us. It doesn't seem to go away. The second one is the foreign-owned companies that we have in the country. They repatriate their profits. Of course, you don't expect them to retain their revenue here. The retention law has been working in some countries. It doesn't seem to be working in Ghana so well. So we have companies owned by foreigners, telecommunication, the restaurants, the banking. You know, when they earn their profit in cedis here, they change it into dollars, and then of course they take it to the other.
So Dr. Sarkodie, yes. I think what we need to do is so that we all, get on board with the discussion. Yes. We just have to prompt you on some of the speaking points from the two you've given so far.
That's right.
Why does the retention law not work? You know, what exactly is the retention law? Because most people just know that we have capital flight. They take their money away, but nobody really seems to know what the retention law says. What does it say, in layman's terms? And then we can all join this discussion.
Okay, so with regards to poultry, I think there is a bigger program for the manufacturing of these things, production of these items, rice, sugar, and poultry. So you mentioned poultry, for example. It is in government's budget that they want to support individuals with respect to access to credit, getting the farms, getting capital, to be able to start their business, involving the youth in agriculture. So this is the bigger one. The other thing that we can look at is you can see in China, they produce rice and they import rice. So it's a question of taste. When the consumer has developed taste for a certain kind of poultry, it is very difficult to just change taste overnight. So we can look at things like now we have the capitation grant feeds school children from the basic level. So we can insist that the poultry, the chicken that they will be fed should be locally produced. Of course, that was the initial plan, that every food that will be produced to feed the school pupils should be locally produced. Now we have free SHS, so the boarding house, every food that they eat there should be locally produced. So we begin by insisting that certain parts of these programs should be locally produced. Then we can take it from there and gradually develop the taste for Ghanaian produce. So you can take a typical things like clothing. The clothing we are wearing here, I want to ask how many of it is locally produced, how many of the things you are wearing here are foreign produced. Of course, if you go to the market, you would want to go for quality. You would want to go for a certain brand. If you compare that brand with what is produced locally, it's about your taste. So if somebody is producing suit in Ghana, the person should be encouraged to increase, improve upon the quality. There was a time that pineapple from Ghana and other, I think, vegetables were banned because they did not meet the standard. So the standard, all these things should be checked. You mentioned the capital flight, the retention law. The retention law, we have it in our books. The Bank of Ghana is supposed to ensure that. And they were able to, what do you call it, go to the banking sector to clean, what they call clean-up exercise in the banking sector. I expect them to do same with the retention law, because most of the telecommunications we have in the country are foreign-owned. The banks, before the clean-up exercise, the Ghanaian-owned banks were more than 60%. Now, after everything, after the capitation, the capital, and other things, so now it is by 61% foreign-owned. Now, everybody will want to take their profit back. So the Bank of Ghana can say, okay, if your profit is, say, $100 or 100 cedis, you can only repatriate, say, 80, and then retain 20 in Ghana. Wherever you want to keep it is your problem. It's your decision. You can use it to buy our bonds. You can use it to buy our shares. You can use it to also invest in your own company. So if you are a telecommunication company, you can invest and expand, employ more people. So the retention law can even create employment, because you are not allowing the people to repatriate everything. So if you're asking them to keep 20%, then obviously, there's the likelihood that they would expand their company, they will expand their businesses and employ more people. So these are the areas that we can look at to keep the city. I don't know if I can go to the other factors.
To the other reasons, yeah.
The seasonality, you mentioned it in your intro. Usually during Christmas, people go to buy on credit and they pay later. So the first quarter of every year, the city depreciates very much. The first quarter here, it means the first 3 months. Yes. So January, February, March. You mentioned that after 2 months, the city is depreciated. So that seasonality has always been with us. And it comes back to the fundamentals, the point one, because you are not producing these items here. So the Christmas materials that you go to import, they are not produced here. So every Christmas they go import on credit, and then they make sales, and then they pay back. The dollarization, where you go to certain restaurants, certain banks, certain private schools, yes, you have to pay in dollars. And another aspect is that most people want to keep the dollars with them. So they have cedis, they think that the cedi will lose its value. So they would rather go to the forex and exchange it for dollars and keep it. What has triggered this is the banking crisis. I call it crisis. Anytime a sector is growing negative, it is crisis in economic terms. So Ghana's banking has experienced crisis in the past 2 years. Since the first quarter of 2017, the banking and insurance in the subsector has been growing negative. When you grow negative, it means that the actual value is going down. So you go down in the first quarter, you go down in the second quarter, you go down in the third quarter, 2017 ends, and you keep going down the whole of 2018. So we are just hoping that after the exercise by the Bank of Ghana, the banking and insurance sector will pick up.
What can we do to make sure that this dollarization thing, even if it doesn't become a thing of the past, at least the percentage, it's quite low? I don't see why you study in Ghana and you would pay dollars at an institution when they can give you the rate on the day you are paying, and you pay in city.
Yes, that's the law. You don't have to pay. There are very few places.
No,
you
so
have
I'm
to
asking
pay
you,
in dollars.
what do you have to do?
One may say that South Africa is an African country. I was in Italy. I wanted to buy a laptop. I had dollars. They asked me to go to the bank to get my passport, change it to euros.
Yes.
Before I could. So dollars to euros.
Yes.
It shouldn't have been difficult.
Exactly.
But they insisted.
They insisted.
So the enforcement of the laws. If we have the law enforcers go from one bank or one hotel to the other in Ghana here, insisting that the customers pay in cedis. If you go to educational institutions, they insist that they pay. So I think we just have to enforce.
They do pay in cedis, but the thing is, we are quoting.
We should
in
not,
dollars.
We should not be quoting in dollars.
The
to
thing,
start with, yes.
Exactly, because Nigeria will not quote anything in USD.
Yes, yes.
Even government does not state. Nigerian government will not state any budgets in USD.
Exactly.
It's all in Naira.
Yes.
So that is the point we want to get to, where our real estate market, our rents per month should not be quoted in USD.
It looks like Ghana is so beautiful. We can, formulate certain policies. We keep them in our books. When Liberia came here, their president came here, they wanted to learn from Ghana. I was surprised. But somebody told me that Ghana has one of the best economic programs in Africa. But the enforcement, the implementation. So you have all these beautiful statements read in the budget, in our economic policy programs, in our economic books. The enforcement is lagging behind. So we need to enforce. We need to make it mandatory. Like Adia said, nothing should be quoted in foreign currency.
I think we have to wrap up.
Okay, now
2 years ago it was 2.2.
Yes.
Today it's 5.4.
Yes.
And you're paying rent pegged to the USD. You are not regaining. It never bounces back.
Yeah.
It keeps depreciating. And the rates, the market value of items stay the same. And you still need much more CDs to buy the same item.
Exactly.
People, the last few weeks, I've observed in my industry, people are spending less and less every day. It's really hard to come to even meet operational expenses.
Okay, ladies, I don't think we're going
Yeah.
to finish this
So,
today.
so let me
Doctor-
end with your point on the public debt. The CD depreciates with the public debt, and the public debt also increases with the depreciation. So one affects the other. They both affect each other. So when there's a depreciation, your public debt goes up. And how the public debt also affects the depreciation is by the servicing of our debt. Last year, we paid interest alone about 15 billion cedis. This year, we are going to pay 19.2 billion cedis. Only the interest.
New Ghana cedis.
Yes, the new cedis. Only the interest. If you add amortization, which is the principal, we are going beyond over 24 billion Ghana cedis. If you are spending, this is how you can look at it. If you are spending 1.3 on free SHS, the whole Ghana, and you are paying 19 on your debt, on your interest, and you can imagine how Ghana could develop if we were keeping this money here. Every 100 cedis tax revenue that we raise in the country, 43 cedis is used to pay the interest alone.
Wow.
Every 143 is used to pay the
measures we can
interest.
employ as citizens.
No, there's nothing.
Nothing.
Doctor,
And then we can look at the positive side. I told you I'll end with the positive
Let's
side of
end
the
with the
negotiation.
Positive.
Countries intentionally, we have examples from Latin American countries, Argentina,
Deflation of Venezuela.
they intentionally devalue their currency. China has done this in the past, so that their exports could look cheaper. So that when you export your materials, to the international market, it becomes cheaper.
We are not
You
exporting
see,
enough.
Ghana should have taken advantage of the loss in the value of our cedi. Now, where we cannot take advantage of it is because our export base is not well developed.
No.
If we are importing simple
Like
items,
toothpicks, yeah.
it means the export, if we were exporting more if you're exporting onions to Burkina Faso, poultry to Togo and all that, then with the depreciation of cedi, we will be gaining. But we are not gaining because our export base is not too developed.
The containers leave empty.
Yes.
I'm not sure that is a positive.
Yeah, the one thing we didn't talk about, which is a recent cost, is the US Fed rate, which people have attributed the recent depreciation to it.
We've run out of time,
So-
so we'll have to do that on another occasion. Dr. Sarkodie, thank you so much for coming on
My
to
pleasure.
Captured by Women.
Captured by Women is coming to you from the Empire Office Suites located on the 8th floor of the Octagon in Accra. Empire Office Suites provides everything your business needs, including furnishings and office equipment. Empire Office Suites is well placed in the commercial property market to assist you. Pay as you use access. Walk in to use our desks, offices, meeting rooms by the hour, or book in advance to ensure availability.
So ladies, it seems some of the problems in Ghana are cyclical. We don't make progress, nothing new comes up. If the city is not depreciating, there are low levels of water at the Akosombo Dam. Today, police have beaten up people. The next day, people have beaten up the police. This brings us to a very big question. How confident are you in the Ghana Police Service? Join us on Captured by Women after the break. Welcome back from the break. I am Nansata Yakubu. The Ghana Police Service seems to be taking lightly its role to uphold the rights of journalists as is done in civilized societies. In a week past, the Ghana Police Service have assaulted journalists by doing the wrong thing themselves. As if riding on an unlicensed motorbike and causing an accident is not enough, they proceeded to beat up journalists on the streets of Accra. And when people tried to take photographs, it was even a much more deeper situation. To help us digest the latest trend in police brutality in Ghana, we have with us in the studio is Mr. Duncan Amoah, Executive Director of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC, in Accra, and Mr. Robert Akoto Amoafo, Director of Amnesty International, Ghana Chapter. Gentlemen, you are welcome to Captured by Women.
Thanks
for having us.
Oh, good. So, Mr. Amwa, your organization has been quite vocal in looking at a fair trial around this whole beating of people on the streets of Accra by the Ghana Police Service. Why would you be involved in this?
We have in the past had to work with the drivers. If you recollect, in 2017, when Ghanaians were complaining of high fuel costs, it took us and the drivers, the ICU, to hit the streets to demand that fuel prices be reduced, which the government listened to, and within a week went to Parliament for. So our working relationship with these drivers dates back, long ago. It is also not surprising that the highest council of the chamber is also represented by the GPRTU chairman himself. So when issues concerning drivers do come up often, we are involved directly. If you recall also, in 2017 when the issue of the mandatory road towing exercise was introduced, it took us solely to initiate the process of saying because the drivers had complained bitterly that it was going to add to their costs, operational costs, and we felt that indeed it wasn't right that you charge everybody for a service that they may not need or are not requesting for. So to wake up to a viral video that had a driver and his mate exchanging blows with a uniformed officer, what some of us said initially was that this driver must be crazy. In fact, that was the initial reaction I personally had. Only to delve into the matter fully, to be told otherwise, that it couldn't have been that the driver had gone smoking Indian hemp or was on some opium and was misbehaving. And so what did happen from eyewitnesses' account, I would sum it up this way, that the driver must have been extremely provoked to the extent that he probably stopped somewhere to pick a passenger, which is wrong. But the law enforcement officer, knowing better, should have known how to even apply the laws. We have said often that if the drivers go wrong and you need to find them, it comes back to the state. The state makes money. And so you need to also find a way to even explain to them what you did is wrong, you don't repeat it. I think that the cardinal principle for punishing people is to ensure they don't repeat or people don't even follow that sort of action. But unfortunately, the sort of sanctions we've seen around our drivers, sometimes you go to Insawam, I have visited there twice, and you find drivers sentenced to 2-3 years for road traffic offenses. And you end up wondering, could we not have done something better? Does the law apply, fairly to them? So when we were told that this police officer had indeed gone ahead to slap the driver, continuously, to an extent he had a cracked lip and loses his cool and starts, throwing back, then it made sense to some of us who had watched the video earlier and said he must be on drugs or something to do this. And so going forward, we were not surprised. They were arrested within a day. By Monday, when they had not even received legal representation, they've been whisked to court and remanded. We felt that, if they had a legal representation, maybe the lawyer could have pled, for some mitigation or something, but there was no legal. So the law is now apparently, from where we sit, being miscarried as far as this particular issue is concerned. And it will interest you to know that we got some lawyers together. We got the Human Rights Advocacy Center together, together with the car dealers, the GPRTU, concerned committed drivers. We all moved out there to see if we can even get access to the driver and his mate and listen to at least their side of what transpired, and if possible, provide them a legal representation. We've been unsuccessful since. We're still going around. We were told to go to Malam. We went to Malam police station. We were told to go to Odoko. And then we moved to Odoko only to be told we should go to the headquarters where they are. We go to the headquarters. We are told stories. Eventually, it comes out in the evening that they've been taken to BNI. And it leaves you wondering, are we dealing with a fighting or an assault instance or something bordering on, you know, treason. And so we are concerned gravely, and I'm sure that the driving population in Ghana are equally not happy with the way this matter is developing.
A few days earlier, the two journalists from Ghanaian Times, the gentleman and the lady who had 3 months prior to that had a cesarean section to deliver her baby, were beaten up by initially one policeman, and then he called in 6 other officers, and they beat the journalist badly till he was unconscious. Have these officers been apprehended? Have they been identified and apprehended?
You see, growing up in this country, we often had instances where the military and the police, they will clash and there's a fight and the police will be beaten and all of them. And sometimes we thought that the military were harsh or excessive. But if you look at the spate of police brutalities on innocent Ghanaian citizens, I would not want to remind Ghanaians too far, but look at the 7 innocent souls that were shot. And then they were framed up as armed robbers with guns left beside them to convince the public to believe that the police have really apprehended armed robbers, though their families knew these guys were not robbers. These are everyday people who go out there to hustle, bring a little money home. At night, they are asleep. Yet they had been branded as armed robbers. We were not surprised that nobody has been punished from that. We are not surprised. We were not surprised that in the end, other officers across the country also seem to be emboldened by the fact that when they even commit atrocities or brutalities outside the purview of the law, they get away with it. So, in front of the police headquarters, a Joy FM journalist, Latif, had been assaulted for just asking a question, what a name of a vehicle there is. I mean, in fact, since the incident occurred, the video incident where the driver and his mate engaged in the brawl, I've had on occasion to speak to some of the senior police commissioners, and they are worried.
Okay, let's let Amnesty International. They are here. We are very happy. The director is here to really tell us. One, I think that police community relations in Ghana, we all know it's been over the years. Some say it has to do with training, some say it has to do with the citizens ourselves and our lack of confidence in the police. How can you detail what has been happening with the police over time and then bring us back to the current scenario, what the human rights implications are for these issues that are evolving?
Thank you very much. It's important to remember that, as he said, our police force are coming from a history of brutality.
Yes.
The history shows that policemen were not about human rights. They were not about protecting human rights. Even some years past, our constitution didn't have human rights in it. So the police were not protecting human rights. Over the years, we have introduced human rights into our system. And unfortunately, human rights is not a core training part of the work of the police. I know Shraj does some sort of training for the police, but it is not as deep as we expect it to be. Because as at now, all over the world, what we expect is that police, the first thing every police would be interested in is to protect the citizen. So even if the person has committed an offense, according to Article 19 of our Constitution, every individual that you find that you think has committed a crime still has human rights. And therefore, that is the first thing you protect as a police person. And if you look at how the tragedy of events over the period, you see that most of the times, that is not their interest. Their interest is to just commit an arrest somebody and find the person that the person has done wrong without looking at whether or not really what happened really happened. So for instance, you find the driver, just slap the driver because they want to give instant justice instead of going through the processes laid down by the Constitution. So most of the times, the police sometimes feel overpowered as well. In many of these instances that we've seen, the police feel that we can do what we do and get away with it without being reprimanded.
So you are saying that in Ghana, presumed innocent doesn't work?
According to our laws, and what the system must be, that's not how it's supposed to be. But by practice, in many instances, you go to the cell. Some of us have worked in instances where we go to the cell to speak to prisoners, just the people in the cell, just to find out what happened. They're just thrown in, no lawyer. But according to our law, they're supposed to have lawyers. For instance, in this case, we have legal aid. And now it's an authority. Initially, it was a commission. Now it's an authority. And they are, immediately you arrest somebody, you ask the person, do you have a lawyer? I don't. Call on the legal aid. That is what is supposed to happen.
They were not given legal representation.
Even they were not given their right. So I have made things to say that even the government is the responsibility of the government in this case was not even done. And they have gone ahead to even go and beat the person up. The police is representing the government. Once he was in uniform, everybody saying he was in uniform, he is representing the government. So the government must not keep quiet. It must act. It's the Minister of Interior who must act immediately, because for some of us like Amnesty International, immediately we take this case up and bloat it onto the global space. It is gone with the image of Ghana. So we are calling on the Minister of Interior, wherever this man is, he's brought out, they are provided the legal services that they require, and they are listened to by natural justice, and they are not just thrown into cells.
The Interior Minister has offered an apology. Is that not enough?
It's not enough.
It is not enough.
It is never enough. I have seen instances where policemen are holding canes at these lorry stations, and if a driver does something, they swing the cane into the car on the person without asking the person or helping the person say, look, you've done something wrong, you shouldn't do it again, or take the person in and let the person go through the processes in our constitution and in our law. So for us, we are concerned that if our law is not followed as stipulated, we are afraid that it will break down.
I think it's also a case that the police do not command respect because of their own behavior. When they're not assaulting you, some of them are asking you for bribes.
Exactly.
And apparently some of these drivers, they are disrespectful to the police because maybe the day before they've had to give them money. So I think the onus is on the police to do better training. And when I see a policeman in uniform acting the fool on this, I think it's such a disgrace because, like you said, he represents the government. And when they're asking you in the evening to give them a bottle of Guinness, and I told them, you're not supposed to drink on duty. And they say, oh, mama, do you get me? I think there's a deep-rooted problem within the Ghana police.
There's the other part of the argument that people are saying that when the police beat up the journalists, the Minister for Interior and people, the fuss wasn't there. But the later case, when the citizens beat up the police, then there was swift, action on the and then bias. But then at the same time, we are also prejudiced against trotro drivers, and people are saying, "Oh, these trotro drivers, they are so worrisome on the streets and all that." And people are saying, "Oh, if it were the trotro drivers the police had beat and not the journalists, the case would not even have gone anywhere."
I would like to say add quickly that one, I think as you mentioned, for me, like I said again, this is an opportunity for the police to redeem themselves.
They need to regain public confidence.
Exactly, because all the comparisons you made about whether or not this one got justice in time or this one didn't get justice in time, their reaction, now it's time for them to show that really they are committed to doing what the law says.
Mr. Duncan Amwa and then Mr. Robert Amwafo, thank you very much for coming on Captured by Women.
In fact, thanks for having us.
This episode of Captured by Women comes to you from the Empower Office Suite, located 8th floor of the Octagon in Accra Central. Empower Office Suite is a one-stop business solution center for all your meetings, furnishings, and office equipment. They also have pay-as-you-use access for desk and other office business solutions.
Ladies, what has been the high point for you in our discussions today?
Okay, the high point for me today has been the explanation the economists gave us of the depreciation of the cedi, that it's seasonal and that it may bounce back. But what shocked me, I don't know if it's a high point, is that all of our cocoa revenue is spent on 3 import items: rice, sugar, and poultry. And that to me has made me very sad, because those are all products that we can easily produce here.
I think at the same time, I would say that the pervading issue has been to be able to grow things here and eat here and patronize our own. Because if you look at the issue of the car assembling or manufacturing and what this is going to do to other small industries when they are finally set up here, I think that is an issue of concern. So I'm a bit apprehended about what it all means for general manufacturing, commerce, and things like that. I think there are pluses and minuses in that, but which ones would outweigh which? And I must also say the increasing return of police, brutalities of concern that we have to look at.
Concern.
And if the human rights conventions are not part of the curriculum of police training, as the Amnesty International boss was saying, then that means that we have a big problem, because he just whispered that they were only 6 months in training anyway. So exactly, or the curriculum has to change. We don't know the current curriculum. That's something we have to go and probably look up.
The fact that the 6 officers who haven't been identified as yet who beat the journalists, that's very worrying, very worrying. I think maybe citizens need to speak a bit more.
we shouldn't call them officers because they are actually not.
The interdicted officers.
Have they been interdicted? Those who beat the journalists?
They're not officers.
They are what? They are not officers?
Very basic.
But they are police personnel.
Police personnel, not
police personnel.
Not all of them are officers.
Our officers are not from the ranks. After training, you're not a police officer?
Not automatically.
Okay, all right. We stay educated. Well, I'm happy we've been able to get some answers to some of the pertinent issues from our panelists. Join us next week, same time, on Captured by Women.